Have you ever felt the kind of fear that grips your soul, paralyzes your body, and whispers, "Turn back before it's too late"? This is the true story of Blackwood Forest, a place shrouded in mystery where shadows come alive and every step feels like the last. Sarah had heard the warnings. Everyone in town spoke of Blackwood Forest as if it were a cursed entity. Stories of disappearances, eerie sounds, and unexplained phenomena had kept locals away for decades. But Daniel, ever the skeptic, convinced her it was nothing more than folklore. The couple had planned a weekend camping trip, an escape from the noise of the city. But as they drove deeper into the forest, the atmosphere changed. The trees seemed to close in, the light dimmed unnaturally, and the silence grew oppressive.
Are you sure about this, Daniel?
Relax, it's just a forest.
That night, the air was heavy, and the forest seemed unnaturally quiet. No chirping crickets, no rustling leaves, just silence. As they sat by the fire, Sarah swore she saw movement in the corner of her eye, a dark figure darting between the trees.
Did you see that?
See what? Probably just a deer.
But then came the sound, a low, guttural growl that echoed through the woods, followed by the faint sound of footsteps crunching on dried leaves.
Who's there?
There was no response, just the sound of footsteps circling their campsite. Act 3, The Vanishing.
Daniel, where are you? This isn't funny anymore.
Panic surged through Sarah as she called out for Daniel, her voice breaking the oppressive silence. The forest seemed to close in around her, every shadow a potential threat. There was no answer, just the sound of her own rapid breathing. The trees whispered secrets she couldn't understand, and the darkness felt alive. Grabbing a flashlight, she ventured out into the darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of dread pressing down on her shoulders.
Oh no! What happened here, Daniel? Please be okay.
The beam of light cut through the fog, revealing claw marks etched into nearby trees. They were deep and jagged, as if something monstrous had passed through. A chilling realization hit her. These marks were fresh. Whatever had made them was still out there, lurking in the shadows. As she followed a trail of disturbed leaves, she came upon Daniel's jacket, torn and blood-stained, lying in the dirt. Her heart sank and tears welled up in her eyes.
Daniel, no, this can't be happening. This has to be a nightmare. Wake up, Sarah, wake up!
Suddenly a whisper, soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Sarah. It sent chills down her spine, freezing her in place.
Who's there? Show yourself, Daniel, is that you?
She spun around, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The beam wavered, casting eerie shadows that danced around her. The beam landed on a figure, a shadowy humanoid shape with glowing hollow eyes. It stood motionless, watching her, its presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized she was not alone in the forest. The figure took a step forward, and she knew she had to run, but her legs felt like lead. The forest seemed to close in around her, the darkness suffocating. She had to find Daniel, but now she also had to survive. Act 4. The Escape. She ran blindly, her screams swallowed by the dense fog. The forest seemed endless, each step more exhausting than the last. Her heart pounded in her chest, a relentless drumbeat of fear and desperation. The figure moved unnaturally fast, its distorted limbs bending in ways that defied logic. It was as if the very laws of nature had been twisted to allow this monstrosity to exist. Every time she glanced back, it seemed closer, its grotesque form a nightmare she couldn't escape.
I have to get away. I have to... She whispered to herself, trying to summon the strength to keep moving. Her legs felt like lead, but the thought of being caught was enough to push her forward.
Just as she thought she couldn't go on, she stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin. It looked abandoned, but it was her only hope. The sight of it gave her a fleeting sense of relief, a possible sanctuary from the horror behind her. Desperate, she threw herself inside and bolted the door. Her hands trembled as she secured the lock, praying it would hold. She leaned against the door, trying to catch her breath, her mind racing with fear and uncertainty.
Please, please, let this be safe. She pleaded to the empty room, her voice barely a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening, amplifying her terror.
Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay. The cabin was a relic of the past, forgotten and left to rot. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, every shadow a hidden threat. Faded photos hung crookedly on the walls, showing a family with hollow, lifeless eyes. Their expressions were haunting, as if they had seen something unspeakable. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching her, judging her. On the table, a dusty newspaper headline read, "Local family disappears in Blackwood Forest." The date was from decades ago, but the story felt eerily relevant. She wondered if she would become the next headline, another lost soul in the cursed forest.
What is this place? What happened here? Her voice trembled as she spoke, the questions echoing in the empty room. She felt a chill run down her spine, as if the very walls were whispering secrets she couldn't understand.
The whispers began again, louder this time, surrounding her. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a cacophony of voices that made her head spin. She covered her ears, but it did little to drown out the haunting sounds. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows in the room began to take shape, reaching for her. They twisted and writhed, forming grotesque figures that seemed to mock her fear. She backed away, her heart racing, knowing she had to find a way out.
Sarah. The voice was faint, but unmistakable. It was a name she hadn't heard in years, a name that brought back memories she had tried to forget. She turned, her eyes wide with terror, and ran into the night, the forest closing in around her.
Act 5. The Revelation. Sarah finds an old journal inside the cabin, its pages filled with desperate scribbles and warnings. The journal belonged to a man who had once lived in the cabin. He wrote about the shadow beings that haunted the forest, feeding on fear and trapping souls.
They are watching. They never let you leave.
They are watching. They never let you leave. Read the final entry. Suddenly, the door burst open and the shadow figure loomed in the doorway.
No, stay away from me!
Sarah screamed as it lunged at her, its hollow eyes consuming her vision. Ending the aftermath. The forest stood silent, a witness to the events that had transpired. The eerie atmosphere lingered, as if the trees themselves held on to the secrets of that fateful night. A search party in daylight finds Sarah's flashlight lying in the dirt, but no trace of her or Daniel. The searchers combed through every inch of the forest, calling out their names, but the only response was the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. The flashlight, a small beacon of hope, lay abandoned, its light extinguished. Weeks later, hikers reported hearing faint screams and whispers in Blackwood Forest. The sounds were fleeting, carried by the wind, but unmistakable. Some said it was the forest playing tricks. Others believed it was the voices of Sarah and Daniel, trapped in a place between worlds. Some claimed to see shadowy figures lurking among the trees. These figures moved with an unnatural grace, appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye. The forest, once a place of beauty, had become a realm of shadows and fear.
It's like they just vanished, without a trace. The forest seemed to swallow them whole, leaving behind only questions and a growing sense of dread. Abandoned items scattered along the paths told a story of sudden and inexplicable disappearances.
The legend of Blackwood Forest grew, and Sarah and Daniel became just another addition to its dark, haunted history. Their story was whispered around campfires, a cautionary tale for those who dared to venture too close. The forest, with its dense fog and ominous landscape, became a symbol of the unknown and the unknowable. They say the forest doesn't just take you, it keeps you. Those who enter are said to become part of the forest, their souls entwined with the ancient trees. The shadows that move among the trees are believed to be the spirits of those who have been claimed by the forest. If you ever find yourself near Blackwood Forest, don't go in. The warning signs at the forest edge are not just for show. They are a reminder of the countless souls who have entered and never returned. The path may seem inviting, but it leads only to darkness. Some stories aren't meant to be experienced, they're meant to be warnings. The tale of Sarah and Daniel serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. The forest holds its secrets close, and those who seek them out do so at their own peril. The abandoned trails and eerie landscapes stand as silent sentinels, guarding the mysteries of Blackwood Forest. Narrator, slow, deliberate pace, pause 2S. Chapter 8, The Return, pause 1S. Blackwood Forest remained untouched by time, a frozen tableau of nature's eerie beauty. But one night, as a full moon cast its ghostly light through the trees, the forest stirred with an unusual energy. Pause 1S. A group of experienced hikers, unaware of the forest's dark past, ventured deep into its heart. Their laughter and chatter broke the silence, but the forest seemed to swallow the sound, creating an oppressive atmosphere. Suspenseful music intensifies. Pause 1S. As they reached the spot where Sarah's flashlight had been found, a sudden chill swept over them. The air grew heavy, and the trees around them seemed to close in. One of the hikers, Tom, glanced around nervously, his flashlight flickering. "Speaker 1!" Whispering, tense. Pause 1, Sarah. "Did you hear that?" Narrator, tense, building suspense. Pause 1S. The group fell silent, straining to hear. Faint whispers and distant screams echoed through the forest, just as the hikers from weeks before had reported. The sound was unmistakable, sending shivers down their spines. Pause 1S. Tom's flashlight flickered again, then went out completely. In the dim moonlight, shadowy figures began to materialize among the trees, moving with that same unnatural grace. Panic set in as the hikers realized they were not alone. Suspenseful music crescendos. Pause 1S. They ran, stumbling through the underbrush, but the shadows followed, always just out of reach. The forest seemed alive, its branches reaching out like fingers, trying to pull them back. Pause 1S. One by one, the hikers vanished into the darkness, their screams swallowed by the night. Tom, the last to disappear, dropped his flashlight. It lay in the dirt, its light extinguished, just like Sarah's. Eerie music softens. Narrator, somber, reflective. Pause 1S. The next morning, a new search party found Tom's flashlight. The forest stood silent once more, a witness to yet another disappearance. The legend of Blackwood Forest grew, its dark history claiming more souls. Pause 1S. And so the warning remained. If you ever find yourself near Blackwood Forest, don't go in. The forest doesn't just take you, it keeps you. Eerie music fades out. Chapter 9, The Haunting. Pause 1S. The legend of Blackwood Forest had now firmly taken root in the town's folklore. Pause 1S. People spoke of it in hushed tones, their voices tinged with fear and reverence, but the forest's grip extended beyond its physical boundaries. Pause 1S. Strange occurrences began to plague the town. Voiceover narrator at 0. 9X. Chapter 10, The Final Stand. Pause 1S. The townspeople, tired of living in constant fear, decided to face the darkness head-on. Pause 1S. They gathered in the town square, armed with whatever they could find. Torches, wooden stakes, and an unyielding determination. Pause 1S. The forest had taken enough from them. It was time to take something back. Voiceover speaker _3 at 0. 9X. As they entered Blackwood Forest, the air grew thick with tension. Pause 1S. Shadows danced around them, whispering threats and promises of doom. Pause 1S. But they pressed on, their resolve unbroken. Pause 1S. Deep within the forest, they found the source of their torment. An ancient gnarled tree pulsating with a malevolent energy. Voiceover narrator at 0. 9X. With a collective cry, they attacked the tree, hacking and burning it until nothing but ashes remained. Pause 1S. The forest seemed to shudder, and then a profound silence fell. Pause 1S. They had done it. The grip of Blackwood Forest was finally broken. Pause 1S. Or so they thought. Narrator at 0. 9 Exterior Chapter 11. The Aftermath. Pause 1S. The townspeople emerged from the forest, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Pause 1, S. They had confronted their fears and emerged victorious, but the cost was evident. Pause 1S. The once vibrant town seemed muted, its spirit dampened by the weight of what had transpired. Speaker_4 at 0, 9X. As days turned into weeks, the town began to rebuild. Pause 1S. Homes were repaired, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Pause 1S. But the shadow of Blackwood Forest lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness they had faced. Pause 1S. Some townsfolk whispered that the forest still held secrets, that the malevolent energy had not been truly vanquished. Narrator at 0. 9X. In the quiet moments when the wind rustled through the trees, they could almost hear it. The faint echo of whispers, the promise of doom. Pause 1S. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Pause 1S. The forest's grip may have loosened, but it had not let go completely. Pause 1S. And so they remained vigilant, ever watchful, knowing that the darkness could return at any moment. Pause 1S. The true test of their courage was yet to come. Narrator at 0. 9X. Chapter 12. The legend lives on. Pause 1S. Though the town of Eldridge had begun to heal, the legend of Blackwood Forest grew stronger with each passing day. Stories of the ancient evil that once plagued the town spread far and wide, capturing the imaginations of those who heard them. Speaker_5 at 0. 9X. Travelers from distant lands came to see the infamous forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of its dark secrets. They spoke of eerie lights and shadows that danced just beyond the tree line, of whispers carried on the wind that spoke of doom and despair. The townspeople, though wary, could not deny the allure of the legend. Narrator at 0. 9X. Some believed the forest held untold riches, treasures hidden by the malevolent force that once resided there. Others sought to uncover the truth behind the whispers, convinced that the forest's secrets could bring them power and fortune. But those who ventured too deep often did not return, their fates a chilling reminder of the forest's enduring darkness. Speaker_5 at 0. 9X. And so, the legend lived on. It became a part of the town's identity, a story passed down through generations. Eldridge was forever marked by its encounter with the supernatural, its people bound together by the shared memory of the horrors they had faced. Narrator at 0. 9X. In the end, the true legacy of Blackwood Forest was not the fear it inspired, but the resilience it forged in the hearts of those who survived. The darkness may have left its mark, but the light of their courage shone ever brighter, a beacon of hope in a world shadowed by the unknown. And so the legend lived on, a testament to the enduring spirit of Eldridge and its people. Narrator at 0. 9X. Chapter 13. The Shadows Return. Pause 1S. Just when the town of Eldridge thought it had seen the last of the darkness, whispers of a new threat began to surface. It started with the disappearance of a young traveler who had ventured too close to Blackwood Forest. Speaker_1 at 0. 9X. Reports of strange occurrences began to flood in. Locals spoke of shadows moving independently of their sources, of cold chills that seemed to seep into their very bones. The once quiet nights were now filled with the unsettling sounds of rustling leaves and distant, haunting cries. Narrator at 0. 9X. Fear began to grip the town once more as the memories of past horrors resurfaced. The elders spoke in hushed tones, recalling the ancient evil that had once been vanquished. Could it be that the darkness had never truly left? Speaker_1 at 0. 9X determined not to be consumed by fear. A group of brave townspeople decided to confront the shadows. Armed with knowledge passed down through generations, they ventured into the heart of Blackwood Forest, hoping to put an end to the terror once and for all. Narrator at 0. 9X. As they delved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder and the shadows thicker. The sense of dread was palpable, but so too was their resolve. They knew that the fate of Eldridge rested on their shoulders. Pause 1S. The shadows had returned, but this time, the people of Eldridge were ready. Narrator at 0. 9X, Chapter 14, The Final Encounter. Pause 1. S. Deep within Blackwood Forest, the brave townspeople faced an unimaginable horror. The shadows coalesced into a tangible form, a monstrous entity born of darkness and despair, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Speaker _2 at 0, 9X. The air grew thick with a sense of impending doom as the townspeople stood their ground, hearts pounding but spirits unbroken. They knew that this was the moment of truth, the final test of their courage and resolve. Narrator at 0, 9X. Drawing upon the ancient knowledge, they formed a circle, chanting incantations passed down through the generations. The entity roared in defiance, its form shifting and writhing, but the power of their unity began to weaken it. Speaker _2 at 0, 9X. Light began to emanate from the circle, piercing through the darkness, and the shadows recoiled. The entity's strength waned, its form dissipating into wisps of smoke and shadow. With one final, desperate cry, it vanished, consumed by the light. Narrator at 0, 9X. The forest fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting. The townspeople had triumphed, their bravery and unity dispelling the ancient evil once more. They knew that the shadows might return someday, but they also knew that they had the strength to face whatever came their way. Speaker _2 at 0, 9X. As they emerged from the forest, the first rays of dawn broke through the treetops, bathing Eldridge in a warm, hopeful light. The final encounter had ended, and the town was safe, for now. Narrator at 0, 9X Chapter 15, The End. Pause 1, S. As the townspeople returned to their lives, a somber peace settled over Eldridge. The scars of their encounter with darkness lingered, etched into their memories and their hearts. Speaker _3 at 0, 9X. Though the sun shone brightly, casting long shadows, a sense of unease remained. They knew that the entity had been defeated, but the fear of its return haunted their dreams. Narrator at 0, 9X. In the quiet moments, whispers of the past echoed through the town, a reminder of the fragility of their safety. The forest, once a place of mystery and wonder, now stood as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets in the darkness within. Speaker _3 at 0, 9X. But amidst the fear, there was also hope. The townspeople had faced the unimaginable and emerged victorious. Their unity and courage had proven stronger than the shadows, and that strength would guide them through whatever lay ahead. Narrator at 0, 9X. As the days turned to weeks, the memory of the final encounter began to fade, but the lessons learned remained. Eldridge would never be the same, but it would endure, a testament to the resilience of its people. Speaker _3 at 0, 9X. And so, the story of Eldridge came to an end, not with despair, but with a quiet resolve. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another, written by the light of dawn and the courage of those who dared to face the darkness.